Welcome back. As you know, this week we are discussing this wonderful book called Monsoon Feelings. And through this book, we are trying to understand various feelings or emotions that people of this land, people of India, the whole subcontinent, they have experienced, the kind of emotions they have gone through when it comes to the monsoon season, the rainy season. And of course, I can't discuss that. Uh, I don't have that kind of space here to discuss the entire book. And also, there are certain sections. For example, there was a chapter on paintings, Rajput paintings on rains as well as the monsoon. And to talk about that on a podcast is quite a challenge because I would need some kind of visuals to help you explain what paintings I'm talking about. So that is something I don't think it would be possible on the podcast. But I would still say that if you are interested in art and paintings, you should still check it out. And you should particularly check out the Mughal paintings, the Rajput paintings, these ones from the north of India and Rajasthan, as well as the Pahari miniature painting, which is very much from the place that I am in. It's from the Kangra Valley, and you will see how, just like Kalidasa, these painters they tried to capture different seasons and romanticized with the help of lovers, certain characters, and in the background you keep seeing those changing weather patterns or the seasons. So that's something if that interests you, you can do. And now I'll talk about a little bit about Mughal India and the Mughal rulers, how they experienced monsoon season and what they wrote about it. So there's a particular chapter on it. In fact, two chapters. One chapter talks about the Mughal rulers, their views on the monsoon season, and the next chapter particularly focuses on Shah Alam's poetry. So, first of all, you know the arrival of Mughals who have origins in the Mongols, because that's the term, Mongol term, eventually evolved into the Mughals. Um, the Mughals in India, they came along with Babur, who was the first emperor, Mughal emperor in India. And his attitude towards in India is in many ways was that of a colonizer. And whereas you see the subsequent Mughal emperors, their views pretty much changed over time. For a lot of them, India was their home. For Babur, it was never his home. So when he wrote about India, Indian history, its land, its birds, animals, plants, it comes across as if, in fact, he's specifically saying it, for him it's a foreign land and a foreign culture, and there's a lot of pros and cons about when it comes about India or its seasons, its land, everything. And he talks about both aspects of it. So first of all, he says he praises the monsoon season. He says the weather turns very nice in the monsoon. Sometimes it rains 10, 15, or 20 times a day. Torrents are formed in an instant, and water flows in places that normally have no water. During the rainy season, the weather is unusually good when the rain ceases. So good, in fact, that it could not be more temperate or pleasant. Then he talks about different trees. He talks about bear tree, and he says it puts out its leaves during monsoon and becomes fresh and verdant. Then he talks about hibiscus. He says it's one of the most marvelous flowers of India, and uh, there are well and plentifully growing during the 4 months of monsoon. Is really talking about the the flowers in details, its colors, and their smells, everything. And that's where you see that these Mughal emperors, they had their love for gardens, and that's why you even today you'll find a lot of Mughal gardens, and they had their particular tastes in them, the flowers, the gardens, the water flowing through them. They had that idea in their heads. But at the same time, as I was saying, Babur also talked about the other sides, the downsides of the monsoon. He complains, for example, that buildings that so many of them are made of mud, they are short-lived, and things inside them, such as books, they get affected. In fact, once it happened that his some precious papers they got wet, and he had to spend an entire night without sleep trying to dry up those papers in fire. I'm sure the papers didn't catch fire, but he was able to dry it up. Then we have Jahangir, who also writes about the season. And in fact, these are two Mughal emperors who wrote on their personal accounts. So you'll find in these two Mughal emperors' writings a lot of personal details and emotions about what they were feeling and what they were experiencing. And just like Babur, Emperor Jahangir also talked about monsoon, its good and bad sides. And in fact, bad side, there's a tragedy associated with it when his grandmother died during the season. So that was a kind of a sad memory that was etched in his memory. But obviously, there are quite a few details, a few things here and there that he talks about the seasons, and then he says what happened during them. It's really nice. I personally really enjoy going back to history and then reading those personal accounts, especially of these emperors, and then see how they were experiencing the same seasons, probably the same land and similar weather patterns as we are experiencing today, and how they described it. So one of the notes that I found about and when Jahangir wrote on the seasons, he was talking about a place called Mandu, which is in Madhya Pradesh in today's India. He says, during this monsoon, it rained so much. Old men say they don't even remember it raining so much before. It has been cloudy and rainy for nearly 40 days, and the sun has occasionally appeared. The first night there was rain, thunder, and lightning, the likes of which has seldom been heard before. Nearly 20 men and women were killed. There's no more terrifying sound. The wind and rain kept increasing. And there I kind of agree with the emperor, because it is terrifying. When you live in India, particularly high up in the hills, you see these kind of thunders and lightning strikes. They can be really scary, at least for me. And yeah, unfortunately, a lot of people, they do die because of the lightning strikes, and that's terrible. Then he also goes on to describe the fields and the greenery around. He says, what now can one write of the greenery and wild herbs? Plains, mountains, and fields are now covered. It is not known if there is any other place in the whole world with a climate and situation as good as Mandu, particularly during the monsoon. What has been written does not convey even a fraction of its attractiveness. So clearly praising the place, but yeah, that's something that you experience in a lot of places in India. The kind of greenery, the kind of glow, and the kind of charm they find in the season of monsoon. It's very hard to describe in words. You have to experience it. So yeah, you see with the subsequent Mughal emperors, you see how much they were into the sensory pleasures, into aesthetics, and you see those gardens being made, the flowers were grown, and the seasons were enjoyed with a lot of things, of course, foods and drinks and celebrations, and just different forms of art praising those seasons. And that's where this another Mughal emperor called Shah Alam II, he comes in. He reigned during the middle of 18th century to early 19th century, that is somewhere around 1750s to early 1800s. But he was really an accomplished poet and lyricist, and he made a lot of compositions, and a lot of them are on this particular season that we are talking about. And I'm going to read some of them for you. I'll read them in the original language, the original old Braj Bhasha or Hindi that was there, and then I'll also read the translation. So let me start with this small couplet. It says, Piya ke milan ki yahu rut ai mai, dadar mor papiha bole, koel kook machai. It means the season for meeting my dear has come. The frog, peafowl, and cuckoo are calling. The koel is crying. So, you once again, one of the things that you observe in this season is just the sounds of these birds and even frogs or animals, and you hear their calling, and you can relate it with anyone, with the uh, with the emotion that you have, that somebody is calling and somebody is longing or aching for something, and immediately that the thing that comes to mind, especially with a lot of these poets, is about the longing for the beloved and the lover's impending return, something we saw with the Kalidasa, something we saw in the Persian poetry, and that has been the theme here as well. And then there's another one which is quite similar. It says, Koyal mor papih ki kolon lagi udas, nainan ki bin lal ke barkha rahe chimas. And it means the promises of the koel, papiha, and peafowl have distressed me. Without the eyes of my beloved, the rainy season might as well last 6 months. So once again, romanticizing. It's the emotion is that of anticipation, longing, and the promises of return, and that's the thing. I think that's something you feel when you're experiencing this season, the monsoon, the rains are coming, the birds are chirping and cooing, and you feel that longing. You feel for your loved ones, and slowly you see that this element of romance is there, but it's also in some ways linked to Sufism, because the idea of beloved, this idea of longing, it can be turned very quickly from a romantic idea to a spiritual idea, which is what you do in Sufism. This extending this idea of beloved or devotion towards beloved to divine. And in some of these writings you'll find this. Let me read this translated verse for you, and you will see that it says, the great beauty of the green earth pleases, and the clouds circle all around. This pauper makes his pilgrimage to beg a boon of Lord Kutubuddin. The peafowl murmur atop the hills, while the frogs make noise as they gather. Turn your eyes to the beautiful waterfalls and spread the covering cloth fully. In this specific reference to Khwaja Kutubuddin, it's about this. There's a tomb or dargah, as it's called in Delhi, and he was one of the Sufi saints. So you can see these kind of references towards to Sufi saints, and how slowly this idea of this abstract poetry and just talking about season, then talking about longing and beloved, somehow also starts giving references to Sufi saints, and then you kind of bring all these elements together. There's nature, this transcendence, feeling of transcendence, and it can be related with the beloved, as in lover, or to something divine. And another one of the verses that I'm going to read, uh, it goes something like this: I beg this of you, Lord Kutubuddin, fulfill all the desires of my life. I worship you. Please hear me, constantly touching your feet. Give riches and a country to Shah Alam and fill his treasure house, strolling beneath the mango trees, gazing at the spread cloth and waterfalls. So you see, it's kind of a spiritual, devotional appeal, and really capturing the emotions of the emperor. So a lot of these kind of songs, cuckoo songs, and poetry that you will encounter in this book. And as I said, different forms of art. In fact, there are also a lot of paintings that you find. And if you're fond of picture books, I'm sure you're going to love it because there's a lot of art there. And then there is also mention of songs in ragas, and how in the medieval India, different songs according to the ragas, they were created in praise of monsoons and how they were celebrating the season. All of that is there. And then in the end, there's a separate section on rains and monsoon when it comes to the cinema, the Indian cinema, mostly the Hindi cinema. And I would like to talk about it in a little more detail the next time when we meet. So that I'll keep for the next episode. And I hope you'll tune back again. You'll listen to the concluding episode on this series, on this particular book, which is Monsoon Feelings. And I hope you've had a good time listening to it, and probably you'll get a chance to read it and explore it yourself. Once again, thank you very much for listening. I'll catch you the next time. Thank you.